The NBA coming back is what we need, especially with all that the country's dealing with right now. So on this journey, I'm going to be breaking down the NBA's official plan to restart the season, but most importantly, we're going to talk about the NBA's biggest winners and losers of the new NBA format. Let's get it.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Welcome back to Journey of a Ballaholic, the best talk show for basketball addicts. I'm your host, General Hannibal X. Now, if you're new on this channel, you're going to be getting my passionate and unfiltered opinion on the hottest NBA and college basketball topics. Listen, I'm a ballaholic, and I can admit I'm addicted to basketball. Now, if you're a ballaholic like me and you're missing the season, go ahead and hit that like button. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel, but be sure that you tap that notification bell so that you'll be updated whenever I drop new videos, which is every Monday and Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, before we get this video kicked off, as always, I need you to go down to the comment section below and let me know, who do you think are the biggest winners and the biggest losers of the new NBA format? So it's official. The NBA is set to kick things off with training camp beginning on June the 30th. Now, teams will have the opportunity to kind of get those individual workouts going, kind of get things gelled back together before every team has to report to Orlando by July the 7th. Now, they'll have from July 7th up until July 31st to kind of acclimate themselves with the Orlando facilities and kind of get settled back into getting into NBA game shape. This is what we've been waiting for. Now, the NBA officially will start July 31st, and you're going to have 22 teams that have been selected to go into this bubble, as they've called it, to go ahead and kick things back off. Now, what's interesting is that you're going to have 13 teams from the West and only 9 teams from the East. Now, if there was ever a question of which conference was the better or the deeper conference, I think that's kind of been put to bed with this format where you have so many teams that are still battling for this championship coming out of the West. Now, once the season begins, each of these 22 teams are going to play 8 games apiece. Now, the schedule is going to continue in order based on the team's respective schedule before the season ended. However, since 8 teams won't travel to Orlando, the team schedules that will be playing, they'll be skipping over any team that's already been eliminated. Now, this is where things get a little bit interesting because technically 7 teams in the West and 6 teams in the East have already clinched the playoff spot, which leaves you with 6 teams fighting for that last spot in the West and 3 teams battling for the last 2 spots in the East. Now, once the 8-game regular season ends, this is where you could possibly have a play-in tournament for that 8th seed in each conference. However, that's only if the 9th seeded team is within 4 games of that last playoff spot. So you could have a situation where the play-in tournament will only happen between the 8th and the 9th seeded teams, but in order to advance to the playoffs, the 8th seeded team would have to win just 1 game versus the 9th seed, while the 9th seeded team would have to win the first 2 games against the 8th seed. So basically, it's just a single elimination or double elimination based on what seed you're in. I love that concept, and I love how it's just going to add another layer of giving these teams a reason to compete, and then once those 8 games are up, possibly giving us an extra added level of games of higher intensity trying to make that last playoff spot. Now, here's a list of the teams that are based on the schedules as they have before this season ended. Now, the only question for these teams are going to come with the teams that you see in red. That's Miami Heat, the Orlando Magic, the LA Lakers, and the Portland Trail Blazers. Now, the way that I kind of see this probably playing out most likely is that since Miami and Orlando each only need 1 game to play, they'll probably, one will play the Lakers and the other will play the Portland Trail Blazers. While the Lakers and Portland, they'll also play each other 1 time so that way every single team will have 8 games played apiece. Now, another decision that the NBA has to make, and I don't necessarily know if it makes the most sense, but they're trying to keep it as traditional as possible, which personally, like I said, I wanted to see them reseed and go 1 through 16, but I get why they decided to stick with the traditional East Coast versus West Coast playoff format. Listen, this season has already been changed so much that I think they really just want to keep the playoffs as normal as possible. So I totally get that. But the NBA, I think they're also contemplating ways that they can add some type of, like a home court advantage for the team that would have home court advantage in each series. So it's basically like setting it up with an idea where, well, at least I should say this is one of the ideas that I've heard, is that they would possibly give 1 player from each, or from the team that would have home court advantage, give 1 player 7 fouls where everyone else would have just 6 fouls. I think that kind of it definitely would give that team that would have home court advantage and an advantage because think about it. If you're able to give your best player 7 fouls or maybe even your best defensive player an additional foul, that could definitely come into play when you want to be aggressive as the intensity kind of picks up as the playoff rounds go on. So I like that idea. They haven't necessarily set that into stone, but we got to keep our eye on what they're going to try to do to give a home court advantage to teams that are basically all playing on the same court. Now, they've also talked about they're going to be playing 6 games per day once the season get kicked off. Listen, this right here, this is what we wanted. This is what we wanted as far as the NBA laying out a game plan on how they're going to get this NBA season back and get it up and rolling. So we got the dates. Now that we got the NBA format outlined, let's jump into who I feel are the top winners and the top losers from each of the conference based on this official setup. Now, for the biggest losers, I gotta start with each of the 8th seeded teams in each conference. That's the Orlando Magic and the Memphis Grizzlies. Now, there were talks of the NBA possibly jumping right into the playoffs, which would have locked them, both the Orlando Magic and the Memphis Grizzlies, up for a playoff spot. However, now that they decided to go ahead and resume playing some regular season games, that's going to open things up. But what's worse is that they could technically end the 8 games in the 8th seed with up to 3.5 game lead and then have to go into a play-in tournament and risk losing the first 2 games and not even making the playoffs at all. Orlando, they currently have a 5.5 game lead over the Washington Wizards, which means that the Wizards, all they have to do is just shave 2 games off of that lead over the remaining 8 games to enter into a play-in tournament with the Orlando Magic. Now, while Memphis, they have a smaller lead over the 9th seed with just 3.5 games, so they not only have to hold on to the 8th seed, they got to try to push that lead out just to get out of that play-in format. But that's just the losers. I think definitely, like I say, Memphis, Orlando, they're the biggest losers. But when you look at the biggest winners of this format, to me, it's very clear. For me, out west, it has to be the Portland Trailblazers. Not only does Damian Lillard get that opportunity to play for meaningful games and have a realistic shot of making the playoffs, which is what he definitely made a public outburst about, which, I get that as well. But not only will he get that opportunity, he's likely going to have his 2 starting frontcourt players coming back from injury. Keep in mind, starting power forward Zach Collins and starting center Jusuf Nurkic were injured for most of the season. Now that he gets that added depth on the front court, that's exactly what Portland needs if they're going to try to sneak into the last spot out in the West. Now, transitioning over to the East, when it comes to the biggest winner, I got to go with the 76ers. Philadelphia 76ers right here, they not only are going to benefit from this long layoff as they had a chance to get fully healthy with Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, but they also are one of the biggest recipients of this new format because they were one of the worst road teams of all the 22 teams that are coming to Orlando this season. But now that everybody's going to be playing on the same court each night, those road woes don't even matter for this young Philadelphia team. So I think you should really, really pay attention to Philly. Look out for them because I think they can make some real noise, not only when they get into the playoffs, but depending on the right first round matchup, they can actually not only get out of the first round, they can make a deep run into the Eastern Conference Finals. Okay, now it's time for the ultimate winner in all of this. That's me. It's you. It's us, the fans. Right now, all across the country, this country is burning from riots, protests over the lynching of George Floyd at the hands and knee of 4 police officers who since have been arrested. But let's be honest, basketball, that's not going to change the realities of what's going on. But I have to admit, it will be refreshing to be able to have something that's going to bring us together and unite us. Listen, as a black man, I understand that my people have been and still are being oppressed. And basketball's not going to change that, but it will give us that opportunity to unite around something instead of having someone divide us like number 45 has been doing from the White House consistently. So listen, let me know in the comment section below. Who do you think are going to be the biggest winners and losers from the NBA format as it resumes in July? Also, go ahead and make sure you subscribe by hitting the logo right here. You can also check out my NBA top 25 players of all time by clicking the box right here. Listen, until the next time, make sure that you stay safe and remember, no justice, no peace.